As Andrea said, I'm really positioned as a voice from outside. And what I want to do is I want to look at taking the exciting developments that Andrea has already talked about and looking forward. What are the potential pitfalls in developing innovative teaching? What are the potential pitfalls when we try and develop entrepreneurship across the system within higher education? And I'm going to talk about 7 myths of innovative university teaching, as I've called it, which I can assure you we've fallen into every single one of these within England. I specifically say England because with Scotland, with the quality enhancement framework, they've actually avoided some of these pitfalls in a way that we haven't in England. So the first myth of innovative teaching that I want to highlight is the notion that it's about spontaneous individual activity that's about inspirational performance. The teacher who changes the student's life forever. This is such a pervasive myth in society. You know, we have advertising campaigns to recruit teachers that completely focuses on this myth. Who was the teacher who changed your life? I can remember hearing 2 students outside a lecture hall in an institution talking about a teacher saying, "Oh God, he's amazing. How does he hold all of that stuff in his brain?" And the other student said, "Yeah, but have you seen the size of his head?" And it's just this notion that amazing individuals are what is important in teaching, whether it's about entrepreneurship or innovation. Whereas actually, it's a planned activity. And it's an activity that is about designing a range of experiences for students. And it's an activity that's done collectively by groups of academics and by employers inputting into the curriculum. And the knowledge that is drawn upon and the knowledge that we give students access to is collective knowledge. So in no way is innovative teaching an individual process. It's not about individuals. It's about how we collectively bring students in relation to productive knowledge. The second myth is this myth that pervades a lot of excellence debates within higher education. The idea that there are these people who are excellent and there are these people who are a bit rubbish. Okay? And there's 2 sides of this that are just nonsensical. First of all, even excellent teachers, even teachers who carefully plan in collaboration with others, have parts of their teaching or parts of the curriculum that simply don't work. And this pretense that good teaching never fails actually inhibits experimentation, inhibits people in thinking creatively about how can I get my students to understand this aspect of the curriculum. And it also encourages a change strategy that my PhD supervisor characterised as where there's death, there's hope. That when these awful people here finally go, then we'll have all the new people, and all the new people are really exciting, and therefore things will get better. And it just doesn't work because people engage with cultures, people engage with the sense within their departments and their institutions and their disciplines about the way things are done. And so actually, if you're looking at individuals, if you're thinking, these are the good people I want to keep, these are the people I want to get rid of, actually you're missing the chance of developing collective teams and developing knowledge together. The third myth I need to be careful about, okay? So it's being student-centred and thinking about student engagement are the key elements of innovative teaching. Clearly, they're part of the picture. Clearly, it's been a really important corrective to say it's not just about knowledge, it's about how students experience teaching, how they engage with knowledge. But in the end, higher education is about knowledge. What makes higher education higher are the dynamic relationships that students develop to knowledge, that change their sense of who they are and change how they engage with the world. So if we forget knowledge, if we only think about processes, then actually our quality is less good. If we're thinking about entrepreneurship, then we need to think about what does that mean for different disciplines? Does it mean the same in biology as it does in fine art? Actually, how does it change as it moves between disciplines? What is it that different disciplines allow students to see that we can latch onto when we're trying to think about how to develop their entrepreneurial skills? So unless we get the knowledge in there, then actually the differences in what students learn disappears. And this is a very common thing that happens at the level of a system, When you're thinking about higher education at the level of system, because you're dealing with so many disciplinary areas and fields of professional expertise, they all disappear. And you start talking about things in a very generic way. And you forget that actually they're not generic. They're about particular knowledge and developing particular kinds of understanding. Okay, the fourth myth is around methods. Innovative methods of teaching lead to different kinds of learning. And this is a real danger where people get very enthused with new ways of doing things. So, for example, digital teaching. Okay, it's going to change the world. It's not going to change the world. Okay, it offers new opportunities. It challenges issues of space and time. It allows people to bring learners together in a way that crosses international boundaries and actually allows them to build things together. But it's not a different form of teaching. In the end, the process is I have these students who I'm trying to help to develop understanding. I have this body of knowledge that I'm trying to bring them in relation to, and I'm doing it within this particular kind of setting. And how do we as a group of academics design a range of experiences in order to enable them to develop that understanding? Now that process is the same, essentially. It looks different according to the method you're using, but the method gives you nothing. Methods are really important starting points, but if you look at the history of educational innovation, what it tends to be is that you get a well-funded pilot that has very enthusiastic people behind it, that works incredibly well. And then people say, okay, we're going to put that across the system with no extra funding, and we're going to tell lots of people who have no interest in it that they really need to do it. And surprise, surprise, they don't work. And one of the reasons they don't work is that people need to be allowed to reinvent the wheel. People need to be allowed to think about, what does this mean for me? If I'm using this particular initiative, how do I redesign it to think about my students and the kind of knowledge that me and my colleagues are engaging them with? So if you get too hung up on methods, method can be a really important starting point. But if it only becomes about method and the purity of method, rather than thoughtful and intellectual engagement into how to promote different forms of student understanding, then it tends to be limiting rather than developmental. The fifth myth is we shouldn't worry about assessment. Oh, isn't it awful that students worry about assessment? My position is you only should worry about students being orientated to assessment if you've got the wrong assessment. If you've got an assessment that actually is assessing students' engagement with the ideas, the skills that you're interested in, then them being motivated towards assessment should not be a problem. Therefore, if you're looking at developing entrepreneurial skills, one of the key things you have to think about is how do we assess them in a way that actually is about the assessment of those skills. And one of the real challenges for assessing skills is that often what happens is that what gets valued is the ability to describe the skill rather than having the skill. It's almost as if I can describe something better than a footballer about how to play football, I'm a better football player than that footballer. Because what we value is the ability to say, I've got really good communication skills, rather than having communication skills. And so if you're thinking about how to develop entrepreneurial skills, you need to work out forms of assessment that actually engage with the performance of those skills, how students understand the situation, how they understand the tasks they're engaged with, and how they then use those skills in order to develop a response to that task. Okay, another myth is that students are essentially conservative, and if we give them new stuff, then they don't want to do it. They're far happier to sit passively in a lecture and therefore just take things on. And so this is perceived as a real barrier to innovative teaching and to the development of entrepreneurial skills. My position as a teacher is always, if I've designed an activity for my students, again with my colleagues to engage with, then I should always be able to answer the question, why are we doing this? What's this got to do with the thing I'm studying? And I think the same for entrepreneurial skills and for innovation. We shouldn't be seduced by it and think, well, we think it's wonderful, so students are going to think it's wonderful. We should be able to say, look, the reason this matters is that this is what it's going to allow you to do. If you see the world in this way and engage with it in these ways, then actually this changes your relationship to this body of knowledge and allows you to do new things. And if you can do that in a convincing way to students, then that sense of conservatism disappears, because actually you're convincing them about why that knowledge is powerful for their lives and allow them to do things that are important to them. And then the final myth is related. It's this notion that, well, today's students, they're not like we were in our day. You know, it's the golden age myth in which the past is always better than it was and the present is always a tiny tiptoe away from hell. You know, we're that close because they're that rubbish. And it's just nonsense. It's a way of expressing distaste for the fact that many more students have the opportunity to engage with higher education. The fact that they do is a wonderful achievement. The fact that people have access to higher education to change their lives and engage with powerful knowledge is incredibly important. And so as teachers, taking that and thinking about how do we design a range of experience for students that bring them into relationships to powerful knowledge that changes their sense of who they are and transforms their engagement in the world is something that's absolutely critical. And I'll leave it at that.